بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم. Today the temperature outside is very cold and we are expecting inshallah more than usual as all the children are off from school. So if the brothers can please move up towards your front row. And if there's any space in the front, just fill that up before you sit in the back, inshallah. So I'll give about 10 seconds. If you can just move from your spot and anything in the front of you that's there's space, just move up, inshallah, please. May Allah reward all of you. Jazakumullah khairan. You're making space for your Muslim brothers after you. Allah will, inshallah, make space for you in Jannah. Barakallah fikum. فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام طلب كسب الحلال فريضة بعد الفريضة أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Respected elders, brothers, and our mothers and sisters over the receiver, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has introduced us to Himself in the Quran using very, very simple language. The problem that we have with other religions in the world is no one could give a definition of Allah which is something that the logic can completely grasp. They either go to the extent of disregarding and negating Allah's existence, na'udhu billah, or they go to a point where they start ascribing some partners to Allah. Now the problem with giving Allah Ta'ala a definition which is not suitable for Him is that the logic starts rejecting that. When the logic starts rejecting that, then they go into either extreme. They either go into kufr. Kufr means someone who doesn't even believe in Allah, or they go into shirk, which means they ascribe so many gods, so many sharik with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we look at the definition that Allah has given of Himself in the Quran, it makes absolute logical sense. Let's start with it. Allah mentions in Surah Al-Ikhlas. It was basically as a response to one of the Bedouins, one of the simple villager from the villages of Arabia, that he was asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is basically explain to me who is Allah. And Allah Ta'ala then explained it in Surah Ikhlas in such a way that even the simplest mind in the world will be able to understand. Someone who doesn't understand culture, someone who has never gone through any formal education, just a simple person who has no education, no connection with the reality, like with the city, with the country, with the culture, even they will understand and they will say that yes, it makes absolute sense. And amazingly, when you start working with new Muslims, people who come into Islam, then you ask them that what brings you to Islam, then they will usually say that the definition of Allah that you have makes sense. The definition of Allah that you guys have, it makes sense. So in this Surah Ikhlas, Allah mentions 4 qualities. Number 1, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Let's say Allah is the one and only. The one and only. You see, everything in this world has a pair. If there is a man, there is a woman. And science will tell you that if there was anything in this world without a pair, then that would not grow. That would stay stuck where they are. So we say if we look at the sun, it comes in the day, we have the moon in the night. If we say the stars, then in the night, then you have the sun in the day. If you look at plants and there is a male plant, there is a female plant. If we look at stones, then there is variety of stones. If we look at the water, then there is salt water, there is sweet water. So everything in this world that we see, usually human logic says that there has to be a pair. So the very first introduction to Allah in this verse of the Quran is, in this surah of the Quran is, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, that say Allah is one and the only, absolutely one. So which means that obviously He cannot have partners, right? Because He is the one. So that means in His Dhat and His Sifat, in His qualities and in His Dhat, He is one and only. Okay, let's take one example. One of Allah's qualities is, Allah doesn't have a beginning. Qadeemun bila ibtida'in, da'imun bila intihain. Allah is Qadeem. ancient. Bila ibtida'in, without any beginning, which means we use the English proverb that Allah was always there. Da'imun bila intiha'in means He is continuous without any ending. He is da'imun bila intiha'in, continuous without any ending. So we say Allah has no beginning, Allah has no ending. Now let me ask you this question. Let's take Jannah. Jannah, which is a creation of Allah. We all know that Jannah has a beginning because Allah created Jannah. It's a creation of Allah, so it has a beginning. But we all believe that Jannah does not have an end. Yes or no? Yes. We all believe Jannah, even Jahannam, we believe they don't have an ending. So just like Allah has no ending, if we say Jannah also has no ending, then what is the difference between Jannah in the sifat, in the quality of ending, versus Allah? Does anyone know the answer to this? The answer is very simple. The answer is that if Allah wanted, Jannah could end. Jannah will not end because Allah said so. Jannah will not end because what? Because Allah said so. But can Jannah come to an end? Yes, if Allah wishes, it can come to an end. However, Allah Himself cannot come to an end. That is why when we, one of the more advanced definition and description of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the throne, where we have La ta'khudhuhu sinatu wa la nawm. Allah does not sleep, Allah does not even slumber, He does not even doze off. Why? Because everything in this world is contingent upon the existence of Allah. What is the definition of contingent? The definition of contingent means that if this did not exist, then this will not exist. For example, if we say that the son, we say a son or a daughter is contingent upon the father and the mother. If the father and the mother did not exist, then the son and the daughter would not exist. So we call this contingency, that one thing relies upon the other to survive. Everything in this world relies upon Allah to survive. Allah is the only being who does not rely on anyone or anything to survive. Allahu Samad. What is the second definition of Allah? Number one is Allah is one. Allahu Wahid. Allahu Samad means Allah is independent. That is where the word contingency comes from, which means that Allah does not need anything and everything needs Allah. If Allah, you see, if we take it from this perspective, that what would happen, na'udhu billah, if Allah did slumber, if Allah went to sleep, na'udhu billah, what would happen? What would happen is everything that we see in front of our eyes, everything that we know that exists, will cease to exist. Because the power and the force behind holding everything together is Allah's power. Logically, we see that you mix some chemicals with sand and it became cement. But if you look at it carefully, both are particles. The chemical is also a particle, the sand is also a particle. So even though outwardly we see it glued together and it's hard and it's holding something together, but the reality is, if there was no power behind that glue, then that glue would cease to exist. So that sand would cease to exist, the sand would crumble, the sand itself, and the chemical would crumble, and the power of the two, which is keeping it glued together, would also crumble. So that's why we say that the contingency, the only thing which is not contingent on anything to survive is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything else, because they are the creation of Allah, they are contingent, they need Allah ta'ala to survive. This is the definition of Allah. Samad, Allah is independent. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Now this takes care of the beliefs of the Christians. What is lam yalid wa lam yulad? Lam yalid means Allah does not give birth to anyone. Allah does not give birth to anyone. Yesterday we were at the masjid, we were asking the children that who's Isa alayhi salam's father? No, who's Adam alayhi salam's father? First we said, who's Isa alayhi salam's father? They were saying the names of different prophets. Then we said, okay, what about Adam alayhi salam? Who's his father? Then one of them said, Allah, without realizing, he was a small child. Then because he was thinking that before Adam there was no one, so it has to be him, Why? Because of the environment that they're living in, they are so scientifically, everything is analyzed through the lens of science. Everything is analyzed through the lens of science, so if you tell them something which does not have a scientific explanation, then their mind rejects that. This is very important to understand. Sometimes people say that, "Bhai, what's wrong if I send my child to school and I give him the environment, I bring him to the masjid, sometimes I do this and sometimes I do that." But the answer is that if someone says, "I'm going to send my child to school," then they have to know that the way the school is programming the brain of the child is, they're being taught that everything has a logical explanation. They're being taught everything has a logical explanation. The moment you tell them something which does not logically make sense, their mind will reject that. The only thing they cannot change is the heart. But unfortunately, the heart is also something which is shaped based on the four paths. One is the path of speaking, one is the path of seeing, one is the path of hearing, one is the path of thinking. These four pathways are the road to the heart. What people use in these four channels is what kind of develops the yaqeen and the conviction of the heart. Which is why if someone says, I'm going to send my child to school, regular school, then they have to make their own plan. Just like we make a plan to own a house, we make a plan to own a car, we make a plan, financial planning, we have to make a plan for the deen of our child. That if I'm going to put him into an environment where everything is a science and logic, then I have to bring him to an environment where he can learn that there are things in this world which are logical but not my logic. They are logical. There's nothing illogical in Islam. But it is not according to my understanding of logic. It is according to Allah's understanding of logic, not my understanding. And that is the true understanding. Anyway, coming back. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Allah did not give birth to, Allah does not or did not give birth to anyone. Wa lam yulad means no one gives birth to Allah. The word lam gives you the meaning of madi. Madi manfi. Madi manfi means something in the past tense, something which is negative. So for example, if we say lam yaf'al, we say he did not do. La yaf'al means he is not doing. La yaf'al means he is not doing, he will not do. And lam yaf'al means he did not do. So lam yalid means Allah did not give birth to anyone. Walam yulad, Allah was not given birth by anyone. No one gave birth to Allah. So Allah is the only being who did not give birth to anyone and no one gave birth to him. Allah is the only being. Every other thing besides Allah, you will find one of these sifat. You will either find that they were given birth to by someone or they give birth to someone. For men, the way we give birth is not directly, we give it through the woman, right? But we are one of the sources. That means that the definition that the Christians have about Allah, they have two definitions. One definition is they say that Isa alayhi salam is God, na'udhu billah, or they say he is part of God, right? They will either say he is God or they will say he is part of God, na'udhu billah. Both are wrong. Or they will say he is the son of God, which is also wrong. Which means, if you say he is the son of God, that means that Allah is contingent upon Isa to be a father. A'udhu billah. Or you have to say that Isa alayhi salam could not survive without Allah. So either way, your definition is incomplete. If you say he is God, then how come he needs a father to survive? If he needs a father to survive, then what's the difference between him and me? You see how logically, when you contrast each other, I'll give you an example. If you look at the books of Christianity, and then you ask them to explain God to you, what will they show you? They'll show you a picture. They'll show you a picture of an old man holding some type of a staff or a stick, and his feet is dangling on top of the clouds. And he looks like a human just like me and you. That's why they say that God created man in his image. That's what they say. So what does that mean? That means that any person who's looking at that picture of Allah, na'udhu billah, Allah forbid, he is thinking that this looks like my grandfather. So why can't my grandfather be God? If my grandfather is God, why can't I be son of God too? Why is he the only person who can be it? Right? Another fundamental difference in the Aqidah, brothers, if you can kindly, if there's any space in front of you, if you can please move upwards, even upstairs, if you can please move upwards, forward inshallah. And if you have some space, just make some space and call the brother behind you to come and fill it up, inshallah. That way, what's happening is it's minus temperature outside. Yes, we don't want the brothers who are coming a little bit late to come late. You have to think, sometimes we can learn from a non-Muslim, right? Many times non-Muslims teach us as a lesson. There is a famous saying in Japan that the person who comes to work first, guess what? He parks in the furthest point. Let's say you have a big parking lot. And then you have all the way from, let's say, we have the Dublin Street parking lot. We have this building's parking lot. We have this building. So the person who comes first in Japan, he will park in the Dublin Street, and then he will come to work. Why? Because he's thinking that the person who comes last, maybe they had an emergency. When they had an emergency, if they have to park fast, far away, and walk in, by the time he comes in, he'll be late. So they're being considerate to their colleagues who will come after them. So since I came early, let me park far and walk in. So in Japan, the person who parks the closest is usually the person who's late. But again, it's a good thing. So even right today, because brothers are coming in, a lot of youngsters, mashallah, may Allah reward them. It's very amazing. We don't really get them too often. I wish that every school we can start implementing the Jummah Salah and the Dhuhr Salah. So these boys and girls, they can at least perform their Salah in school. Hope we can get that happen one day. So inshallah, so if there's space in front of you, please do fill it up, inshallah, okay? Okay, coming even upstairs, brothers. Those who are upstairs, I can't see you, but if you have space in front of you, please fill it up. So where were we? We were at the beliefs of the Christianity. So the moment a person can envision Allah, guess what? That cannot be Allah. Why? Let's go to the next verse. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Allah did not give birth to anyone. No one gave birth to Allah. The last portion of this Surah Ikhlas, which describes Allah's sifat, is وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. There is nothing similar to Allah. There is nothing similar to Allah. Which means that if I can imagine Allah Ta'ala's shape, then that cannot be Allah. If I can imagine Allah in any capacity, if I can imagine Him, it cannot be Allah, because Allah is unlike anything. Which means my imagination cannot categorize Him, cannot envision Him. The moment my imagination can envision something, it is not Allah. So that is also part of the problem, where if the Christians are saying that, okay, just like Jesus is a human being with a kurta on, mashallah, and his mother is a human being with a hijab on, mashallah. I mean, that's not so, we pretty much stuck to the old ways. We did not change with time. We was like, you know what? If Isa alayhi salam wore a kurta, so we Muslims, boys, we also want to wear a kurta. If Isa alayhi salam's mom, Maryam alayhi salam, was wearing a hijab, then our woman is like, man, we want to continue that. We don't want to change with people. One day they become like a mountain woman, the next day they're like a modern woman, and then again they'll become a mountain woman. We'll just stick to what we found, the past people. So for Isa alayhi salam and Maryam alayhi salam, the description or depiction they have has some correction, some reality, because they were humans and they saw them with their eyes. But the moment they made Isa alayhi salam into the son, then they have to depict the father. Although you cannot see Allah, so what do? They depict the father in the view of a grandfather. So he looks like pretty much most people's grandfather, na'udhu billah, according to their books. So when we say وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, there is nothing similar to Allah. What are we trying to say? We are saying that if you can envision Allah, then that cannot be Allah. So there is nothing like Allah anywhere, not only on inside earth, above earth, below earth, anywhere. It doesn't exist. Allah made the whole makhluk and the creation such that Allah said, listen, I created everything, but وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, there is nothing similar to Allah. Now finally, the season is coming, is Christmas season, right? And everyone in work, in business, people are saying Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. And we know that we as Muslims are very sensitive when it comes to our faith. We become very possessive when it comes to our faith. If you want our money, we'll give you our money. You want our home, we'll let you stay in our home. You want our food, we'll give you our food. We'll give you pretty much anything that we have. But when it comes to our deen, we are very, very possessive. We do not tolerate anything changing our deen, and we do not tolerate anyone giving respect to anything which is non-Islamic in terms of religion, not in terms of culture. So for example, if someone is wishing me a happy year, I say, yeah, we can also say, yeah, have a good year, have a blessed year. But if someone says Merry Christmas, Christmas according to them is supposed to be the birth of Isa alayhi salam. Although the amazing thing is, if you look in their own books, if you look at the original Bibles, you will not find one definition that Isa alayhi salam was born on that day. Neither will you find that he ever asked anyone to celebrate that day. So today the entire world who call themselves Christian, if they are celebrating Christmas and you ask them to go back and find the origin of Christmas, they will not be able to find it. They will say it was some person in the past who kind of told us to start celebrating. But since it became part of their ritual, Islam was so sensitive to this aspect of birthday. When Umar radiallahu anhu was making mashwara with his cabinet on when should we mark the beginning of the Islamic calendar, one of them actually said, why don't we do it per the birthday of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And Umar radiallahu anhu said, no, we cannot do that, because the birthday is a concept with the Christians revere, and we cannot do that even in any aspect of Islam. So what do we do with the person who says Merry Christmas? We can tell them Happy Holiday. We can say Happy Holiday. We shouldn't respond to them Merry Christmas. And when it comes to Isa alayhi salam himself, what is our belief? Our belief is he was a prophet of Allah who came right before our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and who was born without a father. So who is the father of Isa alayhi salam? We say that the example كمثل آدم عند الله كمثل آدم, the example of Isa alayhi salam is like the example of Adam. What was the example of Adam alayhi salam? خلقه من تراب, Allah created him with and shaped him with earth and said kun fayakun, said become, and he became alive. Same way, Allah used that same miracle that He used to give life to Adam alayhi salam, to give life to Isa alayhi salam, which is something which Allah is proving to the world that we need logic to explain every behavior of ours, because we do it based on what we can see, and Allah does not need logic to make things happen. So He can make a man come into this world without a father and mother. He can make a man come into this world without a father as well. So that is our belief in regards to Isa alayhi salam. And finally, last point, this is the month of Rajab. The dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajabi wa Sha'ban. Oh Allah, bless us in the month of Rajab and Sha'ban, wa ballighna Ramadan, and make us reach Ramadan. Remember, barakah, the definition of barakah is you have little small amount, but Allah gives you much from that. You have $5, but you're very happy, versus the person who has $5 billion, but he has heart problems because of worry and concern. So when we say barakah in Rajab and Sha'ban, which means in Rajab we stop sinning, in Sha'ban we start increasing our connection with Allah, in Ramadan we start cutting the crops. That is the definition of barakah in Rajab and Sha'ban. So let us make dua, and let us also try to put it into practice, because they say dua and dawa. So when you make dua and you actually make an effort, then Allah gives you return. So what is the main goal now? The main goal is from the month of Rajab, we cool down on the sinning. We start changing our bad habits, bad behavior, whatever we think is making us sin. We start changing that, slow that down, so that in Ramadan, Rajab, Sha'ban, we can build a connection with Allah, and in Ramadan we can cut the crops, inshallah, and also increase in fasting, increase in giving sadaqah. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq to understand all these points and make amal, inshallah. So if the brothers can stand up, please, and don't start your sunnah. Just stand up and then just come up and fill any space in front of you, so that before salah we don't have to do that anymore. So before you start your sunnah, please just ask the brother behind you just to come up and fill up the gap, please. Jazakumullah khairan. And then so that we can just fill up the masjid with the brothers who are coming in now. So once you know your right side, left side, everything is perfect, you can start your sunnah. Barakallah fikum.